60 days ago, I planted beans the way an Amish farmer in Ohio showed me. Not the seed packet way, not the way I'd been doing it for 15 years. Her way, a completely different system built around how beans actually want to grow. The result, 47 pounds from a single cutting, 6 feet of bed. I'd been pulling 8 pounds from 20 feet of row, sweating in July heat, knees in the dirt, thinking that was just the price of fresh beans, 15 years. 2 worn-out copies of Eliot Coleman. A shelf of extension publications all saying the same thing. Give them room. I was wrong about all of it. This video is the full system. Bed construction, seed priming, planting grid, trellis height, variety selection, step by step. And I'm going to show you something I picked up from Ruth's mother-in-law, sitting on a porch with a needle and a length of heavy thread that I have never seen written down anywhere. It will change how long your plants keep producing. Stay until the end. That part alone is worth a click. A few summers back, I was driving back roads through Holmes County, Ohio, heart of the world's largest Amish settlement. I was heading to a seed swap, and I had a name on a slip of paper I'd been meaning to track down for 2 years. If you've never driven that country in August, rolling hills the color of old money, white farmhouses set back from the road, kitchen gardens stretching to the front fence, laundry lines snapping in the breeze, not a power line in sight. The whole landscape looks like someone pressed pause 150 years ago and never came back. I stopped at the home of a woman named Ruth. We'd connected the year before through a mutual friend at a heritage seed conference. 7 children still at home, youngest barely walking, and a farmstead her husband Daniel works across 40 acres. The kitchen garden behind the house is 50 by 60 feet. That's the whole thing. That's what feeds this family from June through canning season and deep into February. We were walking the rows, came around the back corner of the barn, and I stopped mid-step. Because what I was looking at wasn't a bean row, it was a wall. 3 wooden posts, sunk deep, cross brace along the top. Horizontal jute twine strung tight every 4 inches from ground to crown. The whole structure 6 feet tall, and climbing up it, so thick you couldn't see a single cord of twine underneath, were bean vines. Not a few. Hundreds. Deep, saturated green. The kind of green that tells you the soil is doing something serious underneath. Pods hanging in clusters. 3 and 4 from a single node. Fat and glossy, and so heavy the tops of the vines bowed outward, I asked. Ruth, how many plants have you got in there? She wiped her hands on her apron. Oh, about 300, mostly white half-runners. Some nuddle beans along the back, all in a 6-foot run. Said it the way you'd say the time of day. I drove home convinced she was off by a factor of 5. 300 plants in 6 feet. Everything I'd ever read said beans need room. 6 inches between plants minimum. 8 is better. You crowd them, you invite disease. Yields collapse, you waste seed. 3 weeks later, a message reached me through a neighbor's phone. Ruth had weighed her first cutting from that single trellis. 47 pounds. 1 cutting. 6 feet of bed. Today, I'm walking you through exactly how she does it, step by step, and stay until the end. Because I picked up something from Ruth's mother-in-law, something I have never seen written down anywhere, that will change how long your plants keep producing well past the point when everyone else's vines are done. Let me be straight with you. I'm not someone who just discovered beans exist. 25 years growing food. Worn out 2 copies of Eliot Coleman. Read Steve Solomon's Gardening when it counts until the binding split. Extension publications from Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Vermont stacked on a shelf in the basement. Wide spacing, close spacing, raised beds, in-ground, trellises, cages, let them sprawl, all of it. And what I thought I understood about beans, what I thought everybody understood, was this: give them room. Spacing creates airflow. Airflow prevents disease. More space means more beans. That was the logic. That was the whole logic. What the Amish understand, and what took me the better part of a decade to accept, is that beans aren't built to be alone. They're built to be in community. That shift from thinking about individual plants competing for resources to thinking about a population sharing, them changes every single decision you make in the garden, and the science backs it up completely. Research going back to the 1970s on what legume biologists call symbiotic nitrogen efficiency, the rate at which Rhizobium bacteria colonize root, nodules, and convert atmospheric nitrogen into bioavailable ammonium the plant can actually use. At high planting densities, Legume root systems don't just share soil space, they share bacterial populations. The Rhizobium colonies, established by one plant, spread laterally through the root zone and colonize neighboring roots. A dense planting of beans isn't depleting a shared nitrogen pool, it's building one, collectively. The more roots you pack into a bed, the more active the nitrogen-fixing network becomes. Sparse planting leaves that biological engine running well below capacity. Above the soil, something just as important is happening. Research out of Penn State on intensive vegetable systems found that dense plantings, once the canopy closes, and in beans that happens fast, create what they call a self-mulching microclimate. The leaf canopy shades the soil surface, cutting evaporative water loss by up to 60% during peak summer heat. Weed germination collapses. No light reaches the soil. Temperature stabilizes. The bed stops behaving like a collection of individual plants and starts behaving like a single organism managing its own environment. And here's the detail that stopped me cold. When Amish growers finish their harvest, they don't pull the roots. They cut the plants at soil level and leave the root system in the ground. Deliberately, those nodules, packed with fixed nitrogen, decompose in place over winter and feed whatever goes into that bed the following spring. No synthetic fertilizer, no amendment. The beans pay it forward. The Amish worked all of this out through generations of observation and necessity. The science arrived late and confirmed what they already knew. Here's how to build it in your own garden. Step 1 is the bed. Start here before you ever touch a seed. I know, not what you want to hear if it's already May, but everything else rests on this. Ruth piles her bean bed 10 inches high and 2 feet wide, as long as the trellis run will be. Into that mound, she layers 1/3 aged manure, at least a year old, nothing hot, 1/3 finished kitchen compost, 1/3 native topsoil. She doesn't mix it, she layers it. The worms do the mixing over winter. By planting time, you've got the darkest, most biologically alive soil you've ever stuck your hand into. Zones 3 and 4 build this in October. Zones 5 through 7, November. Zones 8 and 9, December still gives you enough winter weathering to get the benefit. Step 2 is seed priming, and I have never seen this in a mainstream gardening book. Before Ruth plants a single bean, she runs what she calls a rag test. Seeds rolled into a damp cloth, tucked somewhere warm for 3 days, germination rate counted. Fewer than 8 out of 10, and she increases sowing density to compensate. No guessing. She knows her seed before it hits the soil. Then, the night before planting, 12 hours in cooled chamomile tea. The sesquiterpenes and flavonoids in chamomile suppress the soil-borne fungi that cause damping off. Seedling losses drop to near zero, no chemicals, just tea. Step 3 is the planting pattern. Throw away everything the seed packet says. Ruth plants on an 8-inch grid, 8 inches in every direction across the full bed width. Not a row, a grid. In a 4x8 bed, that's roughly 60 plants. In a 4x4, about 25. Push each seed an inch deep, 1 per grid point, no thinning. Let them all come up. Step 4 is the trellis, and most people build it wrong in exactly one way, too short. Semi-vining heirloom varieties will climb to 5 or 6 feet if you give them the structure. Ruth's posts are hardwood, sunk a foot into the ground. Horizontal jute twine every 4 inches, ground to crown. Trellis stops at 3 feet, and you've cut your yield in half before the season even starts. Build at 6 feet. You will fill every inch. Step 5 is variety. It matters more than most people think. Ruth grows white half-runners and state half-runners for fresh eating and canning, with a back row of Amish nuddle beans left to dry. Semi-vining to pole-type heirlooms, all of them. Modern bush varieties, bred for mechanical harvesting, will sulk in a dense planting. They don't climb, they don't cooperate, leave them on the shelf. Here's what most growers get wrong. I did every single one of these myself. Pattern 1, spacing too wide. 3 to 4 inches between plants, seed packet says. Feels logical, more space, more airflow, less disease. What actually happens? The root systems stay isolated. The rhizobium network never forms. The nitrogen engine runs well below capacity. Pack them on a proper trellis, and those root systems pool their bacterial colonies. The whole bed starts functioning like one organism. Pattern 2, skipping seed priming. Open the packet, push seeds in, hope for the best. What actually happens? Patchy germination. Half the bed comes up in a week. The other half sits for 3 weeks, or doesn't emerge at all. You can't tell if it's the soil, depth, water Pattern 3, over-fertilizing. Thin, pale vines, you reach for a high nitrogen feed. Feels like the obvious fix. But beans are legumes. They manufacture their own nitrogen. Add extra and the plant loses all incentive to flower. You get a gorgeous canopy of deep green leaves and almost no pods. The Amish bed is rich, but balanced. The beans have to work a little for their nitrogen. That's exactly what makes them produce. Pattern 4, pulling the roots. Harvest ends, you clear the bed, start fresh. Feels like good housekeeping. But those roots spent the entire season building nitrogen nodules. Pull them out and you're throwing fertility straight into the burn pile. Cut the plants at soil level. Leave the roots in the ground. Over winter they decompose in place and feed whatever goes into that bed next spring. No amendment, no purchase. Beans pay it forward. Pattern 5, building the trellis too short. A 3-foot wire cage feels like enough, especially for anything labeled semi-bush or half-runner. What actually happens? The vines hit the top, fold back on themselves, stop producing, and become a disease magnet overnight. Ruth's posts are sunk a foot into the ground. They don't move in wind. The structure runs 6 full feet. That height isn't ambition, it's yield. Pattern 6, harvesting too infrequently. Twice a week, take what's ready. Feels like patience. But the moment a bean plant decides its seeds are secure, it stops flowering. All energy shifts into fattening the pods already on the vine. Ruth picks every single day during peak production. Not obsession, strategy. Miss 2 or 3 days, and your weekly yield drops hard. The plant is watching you as closely as you're watching it. The Amish don't have a secret bean variety. They don't have a magic soil amendment. What they have is a philosophy. Plant in community, harvest in full, waste nothing, feed the next season with what the current one leaves behind. 47 pounds, 1 cutting, 6 feet of bed. That's not a trick. That's what happens when you stop treating the garden like a production line and start treating it like a closed loop. The seed primes the soil. The roots build the nitrogen. The harvest strings itself on a thread and keeps feeding you through winter. Each step pays the next one forward. If you've run this method or something close to it, drop a comment. Tell me what varieties you're working with, what zone you're in, what your 60 days looked like. If you're brand new to this, start small. 1 6-foot trellis, a 2-foot wide bed, 25 white half-runner seeds, and a bag of chamomile. Build it right, let it run a full season. Watch what happens. You will not be the same gardener at the end of it. Hit subscribe if you want more of these. I'll see you in the next one.